John Mercer had never been a man to seek attention. In the small town of Riverton, Georgia, he was known simply as a hard-working mechanic who kept to himself. His hands were calloused from years spent fixing cars, and his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much but said too little. Few in the town really knew John, and even fewer understood the storm brewing inside him. It was a quiet life until everything changed in a heartbeat. 15 years before, John was convicted of a crime that shattered his community. A violent robbery gone wrong that left one man dead. The court found him guilty, and the sentence was death. The trial was fast and brutal, with emotions running high on every side. Some believed John was guilty beyond doubt. Others whispered that the truth might have been more complicated, but no one could change the verdict. Behind prison walls, John became a ghost. Days blended into nights, and years slipped away without much more than a nod from the guards. But inside, his mind never stopped racing. He replayed every moment of his life, every decision that led him to this place. He thought of his daughter, Lily, who was barely a child when he was taken away, and of Jasper, his loyal dog left behind. They were the only parts of his old life he still clung to. Despite the grim circumstances, John never gave up hope. Hope wasn't about denial. It was about wanting something better, a chance to make things right. Even if only for a moment, the prison staff noticed something unusual about John. Unlike many on death row who became bitter or silent, John remained quietly reflective. He read books about philosophy and forgiveness. He wrote letters that were sometimes poetic, sometimes raw with emotion. Over time, a few of the prison counselors began to see him not just as an inmate, but as a man who carried a heavy burden. The public, however, saw him very differently. News stories painted John as a villain, a symbol of justice served. Every time his execution date neared, the town braced itself for the final chapter. But those closest to him knew the truth was far more complex. John was not just a criminal. On death row, he was a father who missed his daughter every day, a man haunted by mistakes, and someone who wanted more than anything to leave a legacy of love, not violence. The years passed slowly. Letters from Lily became his lifeline. She wrote about school, about growing up without him, about how Jasper still waited by the door every morning, as if knowing her father would someday come home. Those letters were the only warmth in the cold prison cell. John's quiet strength surprised many. When the prison warden once asked him if he was afraid of death, John replied, "I'm more afraid of being forgotten." In those simple words was the essence of a man desperate to be remembered not for his mistakes, but for the love he carried inside. As the day of his execution drew closer, John made a request no one expected. He wanted to see Lily one last time. And not just her. He wanted to see Jasper, the dog who had been by his side before everything fell apart. The request sparked debate inside the prison walls. Could they allow a condemned man to have such a moment? Would it set a precedent? But for John, it wasn't about defying rules. It was about reclaiming a piece of his humanity before the end. For the first time in years, John's story wasn't just about a crime or a sentence. It became about the quiet hope of a father who wanted one last moment with the people and the dog he loved most. And what happened next would shock not just the town of Riverton, but the entire nation. Lily Mercer was a quiet girl with a gentle heart, shaped by a childhood shadowed by absence and unanswered questions. When her father, John Mercer, was taken from her at just 7 years old, her world changed forever. She didn't understand then why her father had to leave, why he couldn't be there for birthdays or school plays, or why the nights felt so much colder without him. All she knew was that the man she loved was suddenly gone, locked behind walls. She couldn't see past raised by her aunt in a town hundreds of miles away. Lily grew up in a home filled with care, but also with the weight of secrets. Her aunt did her best to shield her from the harsh truths, but even a child senses the tension when people avoid talking about certain things. Lily's father was a name spoken quietly, sometimes with sorrow, sometimes with anger, but never with the warmth she craved. Despite the silence, Lily held on to the memories she had of her father, his deep laugh, the way he scratched behind Jasper's ears, and the stories he told her on lazy Sunday afternoons. Those memories became treasures she kept close to her heart. The letters began. Soon after John's trial, he wrote to Lily from prison, each message a lifeline threaded with love and regret. Sometimes the letters were simple, "I miss you," or "Stay strong." Other times they were longer, filled with hopes for her, future, and apologies for his past. For Lily, those letters were proof that her father was still there, somewhere behind the bars and beyond the headlines. Reading his words gave her a strange kind of comfort. It was like holding on to a piece of a man she barely knew, but desperately wanted to understand. Over the years, the letters slowed. The prison's restrictions and the harsh realities of John's sentence made communication difficult. Still, Lily kept every letter, every scrap of paper, as if they were pieces of a puzzle she needed to keep complete. As she grew older, Lily wrestled with complicated emotions. She was angry at him for leaving, sad for what could have been, and yet fiercely loyal to the man who was still her father. Friends at school didn't understand. They asked why she never talked about her dad. It was easier to say nothing than to explain the truth of a father lost to the justice system. Jasper, the golden retriever her aunt had taken in, became a quiet companion in Lily's life. The dog had been John's loyal friend before his arrest. And now, years later, he was one of the few living links to the father she missed so much. Jasper was getting older, his fur graying and his steps slower, but he still greeted Lily with the same unconditional love that made her feel less alone. On the night before Lily's 18th birthday, she found herself holding one of John's letters from years ago. It spoke about hope and forgiveness, about the dreams he had for her even if he couldn't be there. Tears fell silently as she read, and for the first time, she made a promise to herself. No matter what happened, she would try to understand her father, not judge him. Life moved forward, but the question of seeing John in person never left her mind. Could she really face the man who had been absent for so long? Would she recognize him beyond the label of prisoner? And more importantly, would he recognize her? When the news came that John had made a final request to see her and Jasper, Lily's heart both soared and broke at the same time. Part of her feared the meeting, the flood of emotions, the questions that might never have answers. But another part knew this was the moment they had both been waiting for. Her aunt helped her prepare for the visit, explaining what to expect and reassuring her that it was okay to feel whatever she needed to feel. But nothing could have truly prepared Lily for what lay ahead. As she packed a small bag for the trip to the prison, she glanced at Jasper, who wagged his tail slowly, sensing the importance of what was to come. Lily knew this wasn't just a visit. It was a chance to find a piece of her father she never had before. No matter what happened next, she was ready to face it. Jasper wasn't just any dog. To John Mercer, he was more than a pet. He was a faithful companion through the darkest days and the quiet moments of hope. When John first brought Jasper home, the golden retriever was a lively puppy, full of energy and eager to please. The dog quickly became John's shadow, following him from the garage to the porch, sitting patiently beside him during long nights filled with worry. But everything changed the day John was arrested. The chaos that followed ripped John from his home, from his daughter, and from Jasper. The dog was left behind, confused and restless, waiting for a master who wouldn't return. John's sister, Lily's aunt, took Jasper in when Lily moved away. She knew how much the dog meant to the family and vowed to care for him as if he were her own. Jasper adjusted to his new home, but something about him never quite settled. The golden retriever would often stare out the window for hours, as if waiting for John's return. Over the years, Jasper aged gracefully, his bright eyes softening and his gait slowing, but the loyalty in his heart never faded. His bond with Lily grew strong. She would sit with Jasper after school, sharing secrets and stories about her father. The dog became a silent guardian, comforting her during the long stretches between visits and letters. Jasper seemed to sense her pain, offering quiet companionship in ways words never could. Despite the years apart, Jasper held on to a connection with John in a way few could understand. Before John's imprisonment, he had wrapped a blanket around Jasper, one that John's scent soaked into deeply. That blanket was sent to John in prison early on, and it became a source of comfort for both man and dog. Jasper would curl up by it, and John would hold on to it during the loneliest nights. As John's execution date approached, the idea of reuniting with Jasper felt like a fragile thread of hope. Could the dog still remember him? Would the years and distance erase the bond they shared? Those were questions no one could answer until the day of the final visit. On that day, the prison yard was quiet but tense. Guards prepared the space carefully, knowing the significance of the moment. Jasper, now an elderly dog, was brought slowly to the meeting area, supported by Lily's aunt, who carried the dog's leash gently in her hands. His coat had dulled, and his steps were cautious, but his tail gave a small, hopeful wag when he sensed John nearby. When John first saw Jasper, a rare smile broke across his face, a flicker of warmth that surprised even the guards watching. Jasper limped forward, but his eyes were bright and focused, locked onto the man who had once been his whole world. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Jasper lowered his head to John's lap, nudging him softly with a wet nose. John reached out, his fingers trembling as they ran through the dog's fur. The years melted away in that simple touch. Despite the barriers of prison and the weight of the past, the connection between man and dog endured. Lily watched silently, her own heart swelling with emotions she hadn't expected. Seeing Jasper with her father was like witnessing a bridge between the past and present, a living reminder of the love and loyalty that had survived years of separation. The visit lasted only minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. John whispered to Jasper, words only the dog could understand, promises of love and remembrance. Jasper rested his head on John's knee, as if telling him he hadn't been forgotten. For everyone present, it was a powerful moment, a quiet act of grace amid the harsh realities of justice and loss. Later, when a photo of the reunion was taken and shared, it captured more than just an image. It showed a bond that refused to break, a story of faithfulness that went beyond words. Jasper, the dog who never forgot, became a symbol of hope in a story many had thought was only about endings. The days leading up to John Mercer's execution were heavy with silence and anticipation. Inside the prison, staff moved with a quiet efficiency, aware that this was more than just another scheduled day. For John, the weight was unbearable, yet beneath it lay a fragile spark of hope, a hope born from one simple, desperate request. John's final wish was unlike anything the prison officials had seen before. He wanted to see his daughter, Lily, and his dog, Jasper, one last time. The request arrived in a letter, calm, respectful, but filled with an urgency that made the prison warden pause. John wrote about the years of regret, the longing that never left him, and his need to reconnect with the two beings who had kept his heart alive in a world of isolation. At first, the warden and the prison board were skeptical, allowing a death row inmate to meet family was not unheard of, but including a dog? That was unprecedented. There were concerns about security, protocol, and the message it might send to the public. Still, as the days passed and the request was carefully reviewed, something unusual happened. The tone of the letter, the sincerity behind it, and the fact that John had remained composed for years on death row began to shift opinions. The board realized this wasn't just a prisoner asking for a favor. It was a man seeking a moment of humanity before his life ended. After long debates and legal consultations, the decision was made. John would be allowed his final visit with Lily and Jasper. The news was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. For John, it was a chance to touch what had been missing for so long. For Lily, it was a chance to face her father after years apart. And for the prison, it was a test of compassion within a system built on rules and restrictions. The day of the visit was set for a quiet Wednesday afternoon. The prison yard was transformed into a neutral space, enclosed and secure, but open. Enough to allow a meeting free from the usual barriers of glass and walls. Lily arrived with Jasper by her side, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. The dog, old but steady, seemed to sense the importance of the moment, walking slowly but confidently toward the designated area. John was brought out in handcuffs, his expression calm but full of emotion. His eyes scanned the yard until they found Lily. In that instant, years of separation, pain, and uncertainty were suspended. The father and daughter stared at each other, breathless. Jasper limped forward, his tail wagging weakly but surely. When he reached John, the dog rested his head on the man's knee, bridging the gap between their worlds with a simple gesture of love. The guard stood quietly, witnessing a moment that went beyond protocol. Tears glistened in more than one eye. For nearly an hour, John, Lily, and Jasper shared stories, tears, and laughter. John spoke softly, apologizing for the past, but promising to hold on to the present. Lily shared her life's milestones, her fears and hopes. Jasper's presence was a balm, a reminder that love could survive even the darkest times. Word of the visit was kept quiet at first, confined to official reports. But then a photo slipped out, a snapshot capturing John, Lily, and Jasper. In a moment of raw humanity, the image showed not a condemned man, but a father reunited with the family he never stopped loving. When the photo was published in a local newspaper, it sparked an immediate reaction. Readers were moved by the story of forgiveness and family, and the public began to see John Mercer in a new light. Questions followed. Could a man on death row still deserve compassion? What did this reunion say about justice and mercy? The story spread beyond the town, sparking conversations nationwide. For John, the visit was more than a final wish granted. It was a powerful reminder that even in the face of death, hope and love could still find a way. And as the hours passed, no one could have guessed what would come next. A twist that would shock the nation and change the course of John Mercer's story forever. The moment John Mercer and his daughter Lily locked eyes again, after more than a decade, was unlike anything anyone present had ever witnessed. It was as if time had slowed, the chaos of years, the pain of separation, and the weight of impending death all melted away in that single powerful instant. The prison yard, usually a place of cold routine and strict rules, was transformed by the raw emotion unfolding within it. Guards, visitors, and even the prison chaplain looked on with quiet reverence, sensing that this reunion was something far beyond a simple visit. John stood with his back straight, a mix of nervous anticipation and relief etched across his face. His eyes searched for Lily as she stepped forward, her own heart pounding so loudly she feared it might betray her emotions. The years apart had carved deep lines of loss and uncertainty, but when their gazes met, it was as though they recognized something eternal. Lily's breath caught in her throat as she approached her father. The man before her was older, wearier, and marked by the harsh realities of prison life. But the spark she remembered was still there. And by his side was Jasper, their faithful dog, now graying, but still loyal and loving. Jasper's tail gave a slow wag as he limped forward and gently placed his head on John's knee. The dog's familiar warmth broke the final barrier. John reached out with trembling hands, running his fingers through Jasper's fur. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the quiet breaths of a man and a dog reunited. Then Lily stepped closer, tears streaming down her cheeks. She reached out and took her father's hands into hers, feeling the roughness of his skin and the strength beneath it. The years of absence were suddenly filled with words and touches that neither of them thought possible. John's voice cracked as he spoke, barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Lily, for everything. I never stopped thinking about you." Lily nodded, unable to speak at first. Then, gathering her courage, she said, "I never stopped hoping you'd want to see me." For the next hour, the three of them shared a moment that was equal parts healing and heartbreaking. John told stories of the little things he remembered. About Lily's childhood, her favorite songs, her first day at school, the way she laughed when Jasper chased his tail. Lily shared her life's milestones, her graduation, her first job, and the quiet loneliness she endured without him. Through it all, Jasper remained by their side, a living symbol of loyalty and love that had endured despite everything. The guards, trained to keep distance and remain impassive, found themselves moved beyond words. Some wiped tears from their eyes discreetly, others exchanged quiet glances of disbelief. It was a scene no one expected to witness behind prison walls, a reunion so pure it seemed almost unreal. After the visit ended, John was led back inside, but the impact of the moment lingered. Lily and Jasper left the prison yard with a mix of sorrow and hope, both aware that this might be their only chance to share such a connection. News of the reunion began to spread, first quietly through prison staff, then through whispers in the community, and finally exploding across social media. A photo taken by the prison photographer, authorized and carefully released, captured John, Lily, and Jasper in a moment of tenderness and reunion. The image showed John's face, softened by the presence of those he loved, and Jasper's gentle eyes full of loyalty. The photo touched something deep in people's hearts. It wasn't just the story of a condemned man's last wish. It was a story about family, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bonds that even time and tragedy couldn't sever. Within days, the story went viral. People across the country shared the image and the story behind it, sparking a wave of empathy and debate. Supporters called it a reminder of humanity's capacity for compassion, while others questioned the justice system and whether redemption should play a role in punishment. For John and Lily, the reunion was a bittersweet gift, a chance to rewrite the ending of their story, even if only for a moment. And as the nation watched and waited, no one could have predicted the next chapter, a development so shocking it would stop the country in its tracks. The photo of John Mercer, Lily, and Jasper, shared across social media and news outlets, ignited a wave of emotions that rippled through the nation. Suddenly, a story that had been confined to a small Georgia town was on the front page of major newspapers and the top stories of TV news programs. People were captivated not just by the image, but by the human story behind it. A father on death row, a daughter he hadn't seen in years, and a loyal dog whose love never faded. The reunion brought forward questions about justice, forgiveness, and what it means to truly punish a person. Some voices called for compassion, arguing that John Mercer's humanity shone through despite his crimes. They pointed to the years he had spent quietly reflecting in prison, the heartfelt letters to his daughter, and the final wish to see his family as proof of remorse. Others were less forgiving. For many, John Mercer remained a symbol of a crime that had destroyed a life, and the execution was seen as the inevitable justice that must be carried out. They viewed the reunion with skepticism, questioning if such moments could erase the pain caused. Amid the public debate, lawmakers and activists stepped forward, sparking a renewed discussion about the death penalty and its place in modern society. The story was cited in op-eds, panel discussions, and even congressional hearings. For John, none of the outside noise mattered as much as the quiet moments with his daughter and Jasper. But even inside the prison, the unexpected attention began to create waves. News cameras and reporters arrived at the gates of the facility, hoping to capture more of the story. Prison officials faced pressure to comment, to justify the decision to allow the reunion, and to address the emotions stirred in the community. Meanwhile, Lily found herself thrust into a spotlight she had never asked for. Interviews, social media messages, and letters poured in from strangers touched by her story. Some offered words of support and encouragement. Others questioned her feelings about her father's fate. Through it all, Lily remained focused on what mattered most: the bond she had rekindled with her father, and the chance to say goodbye on her own terms. In the days following the reunion, John's execution date was suddenly paused. Reports surfaced that the governor of Georgia had placed a temporary stay on the execution, citing the public interest and the need to review new evidence that had come to light. This unexpected turn stunned everyone connected to the story. Legal teams for John scrambled to understand the implications, hoping that the stay might open doors for further appeals or reconsideration. Supporters organized vigils and rallies, using the story as a rallying cry to challenge the finality of capital punishment. The nation held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Would John Mercer's story end behind prison walls? Or was this reunion the beginning of a new chapter, one that might change the course of justice for him and others like him? For Lily, the pause was bittersweet. It gave her hope that her father might live longer, but it also reminded her that the end was still near. Every moment became precious. Every letter, every call, every visit was treasured as if it were the last. And as the nation debated, as hearts and minds wrestled with questions of justice and mercy, John Mercer prepared himself for whatever came next, holding tightly to the memory of his daughter's hand in his, and Jasper's faithful presence by his side. What happened next would be even more surprising, a revelation that none of them expected, and one that would change everything. As the nation buzzed with debate and anticipation, behind the scenes, a remarkable discovery was unfolding, one that would alter everything about John Mercer's case and bring a new wave of hope. It started with a young investigative journalist named Rachel Hayes. She had been following the story since the reunion photo went viral. Rachel was moved not only by the powerful image, but also by the unanswered questions swirling around John's conviction. Determined to uncover the truth, Rachel dug into court records, spoke with witnesses, and tirelessly reviewed evidence that had been overlooked or dismissed years earlier. What she found was startling. New forensic technology, unavailable during John's original trial, had revealed inconsistencies in the evidence used against him. A key witness's testimony, once considered ironclad, now seemed unreliable. And, most shockingly, there was a potential alternate suspect who had never been fully investigated. Rachel's reporting sparked a renewed legal inquiry. John's defense team quickly seized on the new evidence to file a motion for a full review of the case, requesting a stay on the execution and the reopening of investigations. For Lily, the news was surreal. She had spent years grappling with mixed emotions: anger, confusion, hope, but now a new possibility emerged. Could her father actually be innocent? The news spread quickly. Supporters rallied, calling for justice to be done not just in punishment, but in truth. The nation watched as the case that once seemed closed reopened with a fresh intensity. Inside the prison, John was informed of the developments. His reaction was a complex mix of relief, disbelief, and cautious optimism. Years of waiting and wondering suddenly transformed into a new kind of hope. John wrote to Lily, his words filled with a raw honesty. "I don't know what will come next, but for the first time in a long time, I believe in something beyond this cell. Hold on to hope with me." Meanwhile, the prison warden and officials had to navigate the growing attention and pressures. Balancing security with compassion became more delicate as the story unfolded on national news and social media. The community, once divided, found new conversations opening up about wrongful convictions, the fallibility of the justice system, and the human cost of the death penalty. Jasper, the aging dog, seemed to sense the shifting tides. Though slower and more fragile, his presence remained a source of comfort for John and Lily. The bond that had survived years of separation was now intertwined with the hope for a different future. As the legal battle intensified, prosecutors agreed to reconsider the case based on the new evidence. Investigators reopened lines of inquiry, seeking answers that had eluded them before. For the first time, John and Lily were no longer just a father and daughter waiting for an inevitable end. They were fighters for truth and justice. The nation continued to watch, captivated by a story that had begun with a final wish, but was now evolving into a powerful quest for redemption. And just when it seemed the story had reached its turning point, an unexpected twist emerged, one that would shock everyone and test the strength of their newfound hope. The unexpected twist came on a quiet autumn afternoon, just as the legal teams prepared for what many thought would be a final hearing. The prosecution's office released a statement, acknowledging the discovery of new evidence that not only raised serious doubts about John Mercer's guilt, but also pointed to the involvement of another individual, someone who had been overlooked for years. The confession of this new suspect sent shockwaves through the community and the nation. This person, previously unknown to the investigators and courts, admitted to the crime for which John had been convicted. The confession was supported by forensic evidence, witness testimony, and a detailed account that fit the facts of the case far better than the original narrative. For John, the news was a moment of profound relief and disbelief. After years of isolation and despair, the truth was finally coming to light. His conviction was overturned, and he was released from prison just weeks later. The reunion with his daughter Lily and Jasper was no longer a fleeting moment. It became a new beginning. Tears of joy and disbelief flowed freely as they embraced, finally reunited not just by a prison visit, but by freedom and truth. Lily described that day as one she had dreamed of for years, but never dared to fully hope for. "Seeing my dad walk out of those gates was the happiest moment of my life," she said in interviews. "We've been given a second chance, and we're going to make the most of it." Jasper, now elderly but still full of love, was there, too, wagging his tail and reminding them all of the power of loyalty and faith. The case sparked a broader movement. Advocacy groups seized the moment to push for reforms in the justice system, highlighting the dangers of wrongful convictions and the need for better forensic practices. John became an advocate himself, speaking out about his experience and working with organizations dedicated to helping those wrongfully imprisoned. The community that once doubted began to heal, learning lessons about forgiveness and the complexities of justice. John and Lily chose to focus on rebuilding their relationship, cherishing each day together. Their story was covered by national media, inspiring millions and reminding the world that behind every headline is a human life deserving of compassion. As John, Lily, and Jasper began their new chapter, they carried with them a message. No matter how dark the past, hope and truth can shine through, sometimes when it's least expected. And though the road ahead would have its challenges, the bond between father, daughter, and dog remained unbreakable, a testament to love's enduring power.